Well, voluntary organized team activities kicked off on Monday for 21 teams across the NFL, including the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are currently in talks of a long-term contract extension for franchise quarterback Trevor Lawrence. The former #1 overall pick from 3 seasons ago enters the first year in which he's eligible for an extension. And this comes on the heels of Jacksonville picking up his 5th-year option for 2025, which would pay him $25.6 million, bearing an extension. Now, after Jacksonville signed outside linebacker Josh Allen to a 5-year contract extension last month, Lawrence now becomes the Jags' top priority heading into 2024.
I know Trent and his agent, excuse me, they've continued to talk and will talk, and they're working hard and tirelessly, and you know, I just got to coach Trevor and coach football, and hopefully it gets done, and it will.
And for more, we bring in 10-year NFL vet and CBS Sports NFL analyst Douzable as the NFL's voluntary offseason workout program continues to ramp up. And let's begin things out in Jacksonville, where, as we just heard, Doug Peterson saying they are tirelessly working on that extension for Lawrence. But just how pressing is it that Lawrence and the Jags get this extension done now, considering he's still on that rookie deal? And also from a financial standpoint, does it make sense for Jacksonville to get it done sooner rather than later?
Yeah, Kiana, you brought up so many good points, right? Because he still is on that rookie deal. So technically they still have 2 years of services because they have the 5th-year option because he was a first-round pick. But you talked about it, right? The urgency to get this done, because there's another quarterback just a little south in Florida named Tua Tagovailoa, who's also going through negotiations as well. And we know the rule of thumb is, Kiana, whoever gets paid first, the second guy ultimately gets more. So I think that's what Jacksonville is thinking in this scenario. The only thing is with Trevor Lawrence, is he truly elite yet? I think that's the thing that people have been waiting for, because he was supposed to be this chosen one when he came out as the #1 overall pick. A lot of people said that he was the best prospect since Andrew Luck coming out. And we've seen a lot of inconsistencies with his game. I mean, you see it right there, the win-loss when he's been the quarterback. Now, he's been a lot better the last 2 years. But even going back to last year, Kiana, they had like a 3-game division lead, and then down the stretch just fell apart. They still had a chance in week 18 to get to the playoffs, right? But they lost to the Tennessee Titans on the road. And if you look at Trevor Lawrence's performances the last couple weeks of the season, just in the last 4 games, 10 turnovers. You can't win football turning the football over like that. He was responsible for 19 total turnovers himself, Kiana. But I think the Jacksonville Jaguars realize, right, it's better to pay him now, because if he goes out there and balls out, they're going to owe him even more money.
Exactly. It's one of those situations where you don't want to be left hanging, because you talked about it. There's other players out there still waiting for their bag, and you can end up paying a big buck by extending this process. But you talked about the other player that's also down south in Florida. Well, Tua Tagovailoa, he skipped most of the offseason workouts, but he was in attendance for the Dolphins' start of OTA'S on Monday. Tagovailoa is seeking a new long-term contract and is expected to become, one of the next quarterbacks to receive a big payday. We did see one happen in Detroit earlier this year. Tua is currently set to play 2024 under the 5th-year option on his rookie deal. Now, obviously, Tua's decision to forego some of Miami's offseason workouts was tied to the fact that he had not landed that extension, or he and the Dolphins necessarily weren't on the same page about a potential extension. But is his attendance at OTA's a positive sign that maybe perhaps things are headed in the right direction? How do you read into his availability?
Yeah, Kiana, you would think so, right? Because my thing is, why pump fake, right? If you're not going to show up in the beginning, if you don't have a deal or things aren't going in the right direction, why show up now? Because we know this is the offseason. And yes, this is important with OTAs, getting that timing down. But Tua's been in this offense for 2 years already. This will be his 3rd year going into this offense. So he knows all the nuances to the offense. So you would think that maybe things are heading in the right direction because he showed up when football is actually getting paid. And Miami's in a similar situation than Jacksonville is when it comes to Trevor Lawrence, because if you don't pay Tua and he goes out and balls out again, then that price tag is just going to continue to go up. Adversely, right, there was a lot of question marks going into this past season, Kiana. Could Tua Tagovailoa stay healthy? Well, he proved that he can do that. Not only that, Kiana, he's led the Dolphins to 2 straight years of playoff appearances. So when a quarterback does that, he generally gets paid. And I know both quarterbacks are eyeing that Jared Goff deal where he got upwards to $53 million per year. I think that's going to be the ballpark for both of these quarterbacks. I know both franchises want to knock this out Because if they don't, like we said, the other guy's going to get paid so much more.
Exactly. Well, we talked about Tua being on hand for the start of OTAs, but Lee J, do you know who wasn't? I'll tell you anyways. Vikings wideout Justin Jefferson. He was absent for the start of voluntary offseason organized activities amid his own contract negotiations. But if you recall, he missed voluntary offseason workouts last season. He was also seeking that new deal, but reported to mandatory minicamp without both sides agreeing to terms. Now, Jefferson's playing on the last year of his rookie contract after Minnesota exercised his fifth-year option. But Lee J, what's the likelihood that the two sides can reach a deal before mandatory minicamp? And say they don't, do we see him on the field this season?
Kiana, if you're the Minnesota Vikings, you hand Justin Jefferson a blank check and say, whatever you want to write on it, you write on it. It baffled me that this deal didn't get done last year. And if I was Justin Jefferson, I wouldn't have showed up to minicamp last year or training camp without a deal getting done. When you just look at what he did his first 3 years, right? As a rookie, Kiana, over 1,400 yards. Then he went up 200 yards from there, 1,600 yards his second year. His third year, 1,800 yards. So I'm sitting back thinking, this guy's on a trajectory to go over 2,000 yards. Now, he got banged up last year, but Kiana, in half a season, Justin Jefferson still had 1,000 yards receiving. That lets you know how good he is. There's so many question marks about who's going to start at quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings. Will it be J.J. McCarthy, who they took in the first round, or Sam Darnold? Well, the one constant piece that's going to help your quarterback is Justin Jefferson. So a deal needs to get done. We were talking about quarterbacks earlier, right? Whether Trevor Lawrence or Tua Tagovailoa gets signed first. And we know the next guy always gets more. Well, there's a lot of receivers that are about to get paid, right? Whether it's Brandon Ayuk, CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase. Minnesota, be foolish if you want to. That price tag is going to go up significantly if you don't give Justin Jefferson his bag.
Bring him that blank check because, like you said, you have some question marks at quarterback. I think the one thing you really want to focus on is getting that chemistry between your pass catcher and your signal caller. And I don't think you want to wait on that train. You want to get this done and get things rolling out there in Minnesota. It's really interesting stuff right there. But let's switch over to a Super Bowl wide receiver, Rashee Rice. Well, he was on hand for Chiefs OTAs on Monday in the midst of his own legal issues. In early April, if you recall, he was arrested for aggravated assault after his involvement in a 6-car crash on a Dallas highway. And then also in May, he was suspected of assault in a downtown Dallas nightclub that injured a man. But Lee J, just how do the Chiefs handle Rice's situation as OTAs ramp up? We know that he was on hand for the virtual portion of it, but now as things continue, how do they handle it?
Kiana, the Chiefs have been one team that have done a masterful job of handling outside distractions. Let's just go back to last year. Their tight end is dating one of the most famous people in the world, and people thought that was going to be a distraction. Yet they went and won the Super Bowl. We know Patrick Mahomes, who shouldn't have had to answer questions because it was a personal thing. His family members were dealing with some legal issues. Again, not him, his family members, and yet they went on to win the Super Bowl. So the Chiefs have been one team that knows how to make the main thing the main thing. And when we say that, football terms mean they know how to just focus on football when it's time to play football. Now, we don't know what's coming down the pike for Rasheed Wallace. People may speculate and say he's most likely going to get suspended. But if there's ever a team that could handle that, it's the Kansas City Chiefs. Plus, you just look at what they did in free agency in the draft, right? They went and got Hollywood Brown. He's worked with Patrick Mahomes this offseason. They went and got the fastest guy ever in NFL history and Xavier Worthy in the first round. And people tend to forget Sky Moore, who was a high draft pick, a second-round pick, got hurt last year. He comes back to the fold this year. So if there's one team that's been able to reinvent themselves and also handle the outside noise, it's the Kansas City Chiefs. So I think they'll be fine. Again, we don't know what's coming down the pike. We know Roger Goodell already came out and said, we're going to let the legal process handle itself, and then we'll do something. So when that happens, then we'll actually know what the punishment will be for Rashee Rice. But if there's any team that can handle the outside distraction, it's the Kansas City Chiefs.
I want to say they're tested when it comes to situations like this. You just mentioned one of the many instances Kansas City has had to deal with. But like you said, this is a team that knows how to make the main thing the main thing. And despite all of the outside noise and distractions that may have happened last season, still made their way to the Super Bowl, probably looking to do that same thing again. Lee J, appreciate the insight as always. I know you're glad you're not at OTAs right now. Well, Kansas City certainly hopes that their second-year wideout can be available this season, as Rice led the Chiefs receivers in catches, yards, and touchdowns as a rookie last season, and hopes he can build on his production, as KC has the second shortest odds at plus 600 to win the Super Bowl 59. That's behind the 49ers, who are plus 550, high in the first three-peat in NFL history. They're followed by the Ravens at plus 950, Burrow and the Bengals, who, if you recall, missed the postseason last year, at plus 1,300, along with the Lions and Bills. And then the Eagles and Aaron Rodgers and the Jets round out the top 8 shortest odds to win Super Bowl 59.